Dear Alistair, thank you so much for your time and availability to meet and talk with me. Alistair, during our last conversation, I thoroughly appreciated your view about the Masonic journey. Hence, I would like to start this conversation with a heavy question. Know thyself. Why?
Well, Antonio, thank you, and hello to everybody. Uh, do you know that question, know thyself? I struggled with that from the age of 16. I was lucky, I went to the Parthenon and then on to Delphi. And so at age 16, there it was, know thyself. And my father, who was a Freemason, said, you should know yourself, Alistair. And I went, nah. And so it was a bit of a struggle for me, to be perfectly honest. And I think part of the reason was I'm one of those people that never really looked in the mirror. I don't look in mirrors, and you might wonder what that's all about. But now I can look in the mirror, and now I do understand knowing yourself. And all I'd finish by saying is, if you want to love God, you've got to love yourself first. And that'll do for that answer, I think.
It does, it does. And on a personal level, what has this know thyself journey taught to you?
Well, I'm going to quote badly, probably, a sort of Chinese quote. Before my enlightenment, I chop wood, and after my enlightenment, I chop wood. It doesn't change anything really. Your mission after you become enlightened, I think, is to realize that every day you've got to try and love a little bit more and throw a little bit of love into the melting pot. And of course, this is the greatest secret that most Freemasons don't know about Freemasonry. It's only about getting more love into men. And we all understand love, of course, but of course, the whole point of fraternity is loving people that you're associated with. So that's a new aspect of love. And the other thing that Freemasonry teaches is charity. Well, charity is loving a stranger. So here you are, Freemasonry is all about getting more love into men. Yeah. And, as someone who feels that they have been enlightened, all I can do every day is just add to that by, in some way, helping someone across the board, no matter who, with whatever. And that's all you can do going forwards.
Fantastic answer. Thank you, Alistair. We live in a society where false information, quick sharing of information, such as social media, create buzz and false illusion. What is your responsibility as a scholar, a historian for Freemasons?
I'm not a scholar, and have been dragged up rather than educated. Very much taught myself because I want to know why, and I'm not happy with 2 and 2 equals 4. I would be asking, well, why does it equal 4? You have to explain that to me because it's not obvious. So all I can do, I believe, and what we try and do in the SRIA is lead by example, show really people that these things are relevant today, and Rosicrucianism is relevant today because if you were to ask somebody today, is there any kind of mystery or dogma or strangeness out there in the world? Yes, there is. And people in the SRIA or Rosicrucians, what they're trying to do is rationalize something like chemistry and get rid of the myth, get rid of the nonsense, and get it down to science, history, and chemistry, and alchemical philosophizing. So it's as relevant today as it ever was. And those people that think it isn't, perhaps just ought to tag along, and they'll soon find out. We're dealing with the same issues today as they did during the plague. Plagues, there were many plagues, and plague went on for many years and came in and out over the Middle Ages. So this is just another plague we're dealing with now.
In your book, The English Illuminati, you explore a branch of Freemasonry that still today is top of the charts: movies, news, reporting, and so on. You make us aware of The Rosicrucianism, Schroeder ritual, Freemasonry, ancient and primitive rite. You introduce us to characters such as Westcott, Papus, Reuss, Janker, and Engel. You take us from Germany to France to England. I found it's a fascinating tsunami of people, power play, politics, spirituality in between men, that shape that mysterious branch of Freemasonry. I don't want to give too much away to the listener because they must see your book. It's a fascinating experience to go through. At least that was for me. But from what you wrote, I have the perception that the realization of what you had in your hands grew along the more you were discovering letters, papers, publication, and so on.
Yes, definitely.
How did you feel when you completed your book and you passed it for review?
Wow, very good question. One, relieved it was over, because I don't think it is over. In fact, contacts made through talks about this have introduced me to the Illuminati, who still exist. Well, carried on. They carried on during the First World War and the Second World War, and they carry on today, which was interesting. And in Germany, when I spoke to them, they say their type of Freemasonry is just a more individual type of different Freemasonry to the normal Freemasonry. They tend to be more intellectuals in Germany in their craft than before. So I was very surprised to find that the things in my book, the rituals in my book, are the rituals that were actually used by Illuminati lodges, not this sort of theoretical work that has been published over the last 100 or so years, which came directly from Adam Weishaupt, but the more Masonic, cut down, punchier rituals that are in my book, the 4 rituals, although they're not all complete. But I feel that the SRIA archives and history and books has finally got a place where it can be seen in its glory, proof that we've got these fabulous things. A friend used to phone me up. He said, Alistair, phoning you up is like interrupting someone who's going through the Ark of the Covenant, pulling out the chalice, pulling out the sort of holy spear. You know, you're always working on something that is absolutely fascinating and amazing. And, you know, what I do is I do a little bit, gather it all together and put it in a pile to come back to later. And this pile is just
growing.
And so the Illuminati story, I think, is going to carry on. We're talking with people. Somebody volunteered to help me and has gone to Russia and sought out the Nazi archives. So when the Nazis in the Second World War destroyed all the Masonic temples, they took all the interesting documents and stuff.
Exactly.
The Russians stole it all at the end of the war, took it all back to, and now the Russian Museum is giving it back to the lodges concerned if they write and ask for it.
Wow.
And I sent, somebody wanted to get involved. I suggested this is a project for him. And they've sent me like a dozen documents of real Rosicrucian lodges still working in the 1930s before the war.
In Germany.
And carrying on afterwards, and still surviving. So we've got the sort of, it's still going. It was going during the war. So, you know, my book was just 1900 to 1902.
Right.
There's perhaps a bit more of a story. But I'm working on something completely different at the moment. And again, it's a journey. You're absolutely right. The Illuminati book is not just the contents of rituals and the history and the mysteries of the Illuminati. It's very much about, you know, you start with one simple plain book with no pictures, you know, and for 2 or 3 years I had no pictures. I had about 2 or 3
Yeah, you
horrible.
write also. You
And
also
it
write
now
for
has
the book.
224 pictures. I mean, it's like a
Wow.
comic book. So, when I started, it had nothing, and it's turned into something that. I mean, I'd literally finished writing the book, and the 3 certificates arrived through someone donated them back. They had borrowed them,
Yeah.
hadn't returned them for about 20 years. They came back, UGL, and the people in the UGLE Museum and Library said, "Oh, Alistair, I've got a box for you." Opened it up, and on the top of the certificates, they knew
Yeah.
how important that was.
Wow.
I said, "Can I use them?" And they said, "Yeah, they're yours. You know, these are yours,
Yeah, really.
and we're giving them back to you." So, yeah, it was a big journey for me. Wow, writing a book is not easy.
I can imagine. Out of the characters that you introduce us to in the book, Alistair, which one touched you the most and why?
Of course, Westcott, because I found his whole life's work in one box. So in our Hampstead library, there was a huge wooden crate, massive thing, great big thing, and it had a copy of every single paper he'd ever done. He redid them, but we're talking about nearly 230 documents in this book. Obviously, he was a key player, and he was an enthusiast and turned the SRIA around. It was dying on its feet, and he resurrected it.
Now, you mentioned something very interesting. You actually lead me to the next question. That time is quite fascinating. I mean, 1900, the transition between 18 to 1900 is not just about men, the whole society. We are going from romanticism to rationalism. It's the beginning that leads to the First World War and everything that happened in the 1900s. In England, we see Westcott and Juncker, that is in Germany, if I'm correct. But what happened with the Grand Lodge, the UGLE, that was trying to assess his power, etc. Royal Society, where a lot of members were intercrossed between them. They were never involved into this war for the Illuminati in England.
No. And to United Grand Lodge's greatest support, that's not quite the word, I think that UGLE's stance, which is not to get involved in all these side orders, is perfect, because do you know what? They have a perfect 3 degrees, and I believe that all the knowledge you need to know in Masonry comes from the 1st degree, that's not only used in England but also Scotland and Ireland. Not so much in France. They changed it dramatically, and because of that, a lot of the American Freemasonry don't use the degrees in Freemasonry that give you the real information. But you only need to understand better the 1st degree to understand everything, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they don't get involved in the Grand Lodge wars. Members of United Grand Lodge may have got involved with saying this or doing that, but it would never get involved as a group. And that's the way it should be. And by keeping themselves at that higher level, that's great. But people are people, and people do like badges and rank and all these kind of things. It's not something that drives me and turns me off a bit. They should be rewards for the work you've done, not because you've been around for a certain amount of time. But that's just me,
Yeah, it's a valid point, and I support this thought. Back to the Illuminati. Why did their message fell on deaf ears in England?
Well, Grand Lodge Wars was one thing, but what I've now found out, the new scoop from my talks I've given and speaking directly with a Illuminati member, not some, with a Illuminati member, is that what they did, that Westcott turned it down because it contained an 18th degree. The Rosenkreuz degree in the Illuminati is an Old English version of the 18th degree. And as my book shows, it's literally a quarter of the size of today's 18th degree in England, for example.
Yeah.
So it's a very cut down version. It's a very alchemical version, and it doesn't involve any knighthood. you didn't get your knighthood in the Illuminati in the Rosenkreutzer grade. You got it in the Scottish Knight grade before that. So you became a knight, a Masonic knight, in the Scottish Rite degree, and in the 18th degree version, the Rosenkreutzer version, it was more an alchemical journey, and it is the journey that you go through in the 18th degree. So it really was, following on from what I've just said, Grand Lodge Wars stopped the Illuminati coming into England because Westcott was just promoted into his first active Grand Lodge, his first Grand Lodge rank that year in the June. This was all happening in the February and the October. He probably realized he wouldn't get it, or it could have been taken away from him, and he was involved in other Masonic things as well as just the Rosicrucians. So yeah, it was that. And in Germany today, what they've done is their Illuminati lodges are attached to Scottish Rite. So what happens is you cannot be a member of the Illuminati in Germany unless you've already received your Scottish Rite grades. And that's how they've got around it, and that's how they've carried on. And I believe that they are looking for recognition from one of the Grand Lodges in Germany, and that's something that may be happening in the next couple of months.
Wow. Wow, that's an interesting.
That's gonna make things a lot more interesting, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's bringing a new dimension in the story.
That's a scoop for this interview. You see,
I'm sure
no one's ever said that.
Who's listening is taking note about this one. So back to the Illuminati history, the history itself, not the people. What surprised you the most of the ritual, the approach, the history, or the particular element that they analyze of it?
So this is the history of the Illuminati,
handwritten by Westcott. That's a jewel. Oh my God! Yeah.
Okay. In his handwriting, plain, boring old text. Obviously,
no images in the book.
Yeah, it's just the images are in the book, and you're reading handwriting, and the first thing, this is the history and the mysteries of the Illuminati. And you asked me, what did I think about the history? I started reading this. Obviously, it was a Westcott paper I'd never seen before. So he had never, ever, ever, ever published this or delivered it in a college. So my book is the first time this has ever been seen. But it wasn't his history of the Illuminati. It was Royce's history of the Illuminati. And Royce didn't get it from his head. He got it from Adam Weishaupt's History of the Illuminati, which he wrote and is available in German. And Engel, he also wrote a history. His history is about 5 or 600 pages. What came across was how beautiful, or I've written down here, how nice the Illuminati are compared to their perceived image, and how they were just another group of people that wanted to do two things. When you tear away all the things that people have said about Freemasonry from what they said about the Illuminati, all that's left is the Illuminati wanted to educate children and women. And the reason that was so revolutionary in those days is that no women were educated unless their parents had lots of money or social position. And children worked. They weren't educated. And just to give you a clue, and I mentioned it in the book, I didn't realize that we didn't legally make our children go to school until the 1930s in the UK. So education for children had to wait 200 years. And as far as what they were being educated, well, they're being educated in the mysteries. So the Greek and the Indian and the Persian and the Egyptian mysteries, that's what Illuminati want to educate. And this wasn't available to people. And of course, we only have to look at how recent women have been included into the church to realize another couple of 100 years. So the Illuminati were 200 years ahead of the game. And what I like about the history was that that's all they were trying to do. And I love in the Minerva grade, the one-to-one, you become a member before you become a member. What are you interested in reading in? Oh, let me give you another book. Oh, you've read that book. Oh, what did you think of that? Individual training and learning. Now, we don't have time in Masonry for that. We should do. And that's the lesson that Masonry should learn from the Illuminati. And that's in the Minerva degrees.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alistair. Before we move into the next chapter of our conversation, why do you think the Illuminati have become this obsession for conspiracy theories, books, films, articles, and so on? What does this group of men that created this, element, like you just saying, of education, research, and so on? Why did he enter into this obsession conspiracy theories?
Well, I'm going to answer that a slightly different way, if I might. I think it's because people want to believe there is a group of people that are doing those kind of things. They want to believe that. And, topics for a study group, one would be truth. That's probably about 3 study group meetings worth. And then lying is probably at least 1 or 2 study group meetings worth, talking about lying. What I mean by this is, and as we found today, as you were talking about, a lot of things that are going on, people want to believe the lie. And the lie becomes the truth because people want to believe that lie. It's because they want that to be the truth, even though it is a lie, it's perceived as a lie. And so if you could just imagine that the Freemasons in Europe at the time were going, let's make the Illuminati the bad guys. Yeah. And there's a very good reason for that. And I mentioned it in the book. Another bit of the Grand Lodge Wars. The Illuminati were essentially Catholics in the south of Germany. Yeah. In Bavaria, they're a bit like the Scottish with kilts. In Bavaria, they wear lederhosen. Correct. And they're the crazy ones, the if I may be so general. And in the north were the Prussians, who are the very London sort of, proper gentlemen. And the Prussians at the time that the Illuminati were around were involved with the Golden and Rosicrucians. Okay. Nothing to do with our SRIA, I have to say, because their rituals are very much table rituals. So given round a table, there's no moving around, and they were alchemical. So let's get that absolutely straight. The Golden and Rosicrucians are nothing to do with the SRIA, even though people like the Golden Dawn have said so. That doesn't make it true. Our rituals. But in Germany, the people in power, the Prussian king, was a Rosicrucian. He thought, if we're going to have problems, let the church go after the Illuminati. We're okay. Yeah. So if you ask me, I imagine, and then of course the 2 exposés, one by Burrell and one by Robinson. Yeah. So Burrell was the Frenchman. Well, the French Revolution was boiling, and you can bet the French Freemasons were going, let's blame it on those new people, the Illuminati. And in England, of course, Robinson's take, I think he was involved in Europe to a certain extent, and they also wanted someone to blame, and Robinson blamed the Scottish Stuarts and the Illuminati, lumped them 2 together. So yes, I think it was, let's find someone to blame. The Illuminati will do nicely. They were only in existence for 11 years officially, and then they were underground for another 20 years and then disappeared in the French Revolution. So they didn't have much of a chance, and they had everyone against them. Yeah. That helps answer that question.
It does. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, Alistair, about how plague were part of society, and it went on for way longer than what we're experiencing. We are in 1.5 years of half lockdown, full lockdown, distancing and changing of society. Even Freemasonry, for the first time ever, had to suspend all its ceremonies and meetings. Having studied history, looking in such a depth of how individual and society develop across time, do you think there is a dangerous bell for Freemasonry in the future, what we are experiencing with COVID-19?
It wasn't a surprise to us in the Rosicrucians. We had a fabulous paper written by somebody who said, "Do you know what? The stars are the stars and the planets are aligned, and this most incredible change in everything is going to happen next year." And we all went, "Ha ha ha!" Well, I certainly did. But others, that's my point of view. Others, more central, said, "Well, no, that's quite interesting." And I had to say, and those who were believers said, "Yeah, there's going to be a cosmic change." And blow me down, there was. And the rest of us now, we look back on that paper and think, "Wow, that we didn't know what it was going to be, but it was going to be." Is it going to change the craft? No, I mean, people are desperate in the craft to get back into their lodges, and people are desperate. The camaraderie is enormous, and there's a very good reason for that. And so people will want that camaraderie and get back into their lodges and temples. Will they react differently to one another after this? Yes, I think so. There'll be slightly more distance. So when you're being led around a lodge, you might be led around the lodge at a bit of a distance, and there might be some masks on. But yeah, it's going to change. But it'll come back on soon. But yeah, I mean, if nobody's saying it at the moment, but it was predicted. I mean, there has been a massive shift change in the heavens, so we kind of knew about that.
Freemasonry in the next 100 years, 200 years might fall in the same trap as the Illuminati.
No, because I think it's so foundly based, and as I say, the position that UGLE's always taken in England about it, and in Scotland and Ireland, similarly, to get above the whole business. The secrets are there to be uncovered in the highest depth of allegory. I mean, when I was talking about the first degree, it's not an easy thing to find the deep allegory that gives you your answers, but they're there in the first degree. And so it has a real message there in it. When I was looking at the Illuminati rituals, not so much. I mean, I was looking to see if Adam Weishaupt, was an adept and really got there. His problem is he talks too much, a bit like me, says too much, and didn't really, I don't know, think he had the answer. Well, the Illuminati has carried on. So, if you'd asked me this question 6 weeks ago when we first spoke, Antonio, and before my video where people joined in from the Illuminati, because I believe there were members joined from other Illuminati lodges as well, just to sort of, but why would they tell anybody? They don't need to. And of course, that's the beautiful thing about a good esoteric order, is doesn't need to tell anybody.
Yeah.
It invites you in, says, "Would you like to join us?" And you go, "Yeah, okay." And this has happened to me a number of times. You go, "Oh, what's that all about?" And then you find out what a wonderful thing it is. And you think, wow, but why? It's quality, not quantity. Freemasonry is a recruiting area. It gives people their induction into the mysteries. So it's an official way of very correctly obtaining the ancient mysteries in a formalized format, in a very safe format, and is to be encouraged. And the Illuminati, it offered too many degrees. It started appealing to those people that said, "Oh, well, I want to be a 13th degree or something," and that's kind of where it goes wrong. And of course, Royce was out to get 360 degrees. I mean, that's where he was going.
What are you currently focusing on?
Well, I made a list. seriously, you would not believe that.
You can put it on screen if you want later.
No, so I'm writing this incredible book, which is almost another journey, and it's going to be more of the Illuminati story. Basically, I realized that the cipher manuscript that was used to make the Golden Dawn was notes taken of a real thing, a real ceremony, a real lecture. It was clear, having picked up the pages, that it came from something, and they were notes. They were. It's not the cipher manuscript was never a ritual. So where did it come from?
Yeah.
Well, I tracked it down and I found it, and then I was staggered and surprised that I then found, just like in my book, 2-3 years in to writing it, I discovered that all the signs, symbols, and tokens used in the Golden Dawn,
wow,
where they came from, everyone.
Serious.
And I sat there and went, oh, okay. And then I did my Alistair, well, why? What's it all about? And so the book has taken a little bit longer to read, because I now understand kind of what it's all about. So what you'll be getting in this second book is, where did all of this stuff come from? I found out so many things about some of the ritual practices, and it's not going to be any lighter read than the first one. It contains lots of stuff.
Now, this is marketing 101. I mean, I'm sure that who's listening, he wants to buy the book already. So you have to give me a date of when you expect the book to come out, at least.
No. So what I'm also working on is, we've got a fabulous website for London SRIA. So this is the province of London, and it's going to talk about what we do and the meetings, and we've got some very special ways of doing bits and pieces, and I'm just helping. So yesterday I spent 4 hours working on that. Yesterday I also spent another 4 hours on the archives, tidying up the listing, checking the bits and pieces, and they're all in folders and files, and there's a whole load of things to be done on that. I've been working on the Ravenshaw letter to try and upgrade it. I've been updating some Bruce Wilson history on the SRIA. I've got a lot of work I'm doing with the current Illuminati. I'm working with the SRIS, the Scottish branch, to get all the documents we have in our archives available to their members. And I'm going to do a big transfer of huge amount of them. I've got a paper I'm delivering in Mercy College, which is in Liverpool. And that'll be on a 1600 BC ritual that will amaze everyone involved. Wow. I've got a colleague coming in, and we're going to go through some Mackenzie. I found some letters. Turns out to be parts of the chapter that Mackenzie wrote on the tarot, but he's really writing about the card game. But it's a paper that's never been available. People have talked about it, but actually found about 12-18 pages of it. So he's going to come in. Hopefully I'm going to encourage him to produce a book on that. Yeah. I'm helping someone with a fantastic new version of the Gimme Figurin secret symbols of the Rosicrucians, a hand painted, not so obvious one, slightly different. I've got some German experts deciphering at the moment, and Ian Allen are going to produce a special high quality gloss, beautiful book on this incredible new thing. Oh yes, there's the occult significance of the tarot cards, and Alistair Crowley's tarot cards that we've got a beautiful flyer for that was given. Some Belgians are helping me track down Dr. Thessing, the Belgian who gave the Golden Dawn their second order ritual. The Sublime Choice degrees, Memphis Mizraim, seem to be a good fit and go back to the 1700s. I'm also working just in the background on the SRIA history and updating it. It's a bit out of date now.
After everything you told me before, I really wonder what the answer to this question is going to be. But who or what inspire Alistair Lee today?
Well, it's an easy question. to answer, because it's something every day I'm inspired by them. So, 15, 20 years ago, I started running the study group and encouraging people to give papers, to do things this way and that way, and just become Rosicrucians, and trying to make Rosicrucianism relevant to today. And the thing that inspires me is these 10, 15, 20 people are now becoming 10, 15 Alistairs. They're as interested and enthusiastic. But what inspires me most about them is that each of them has a knowledge and understanding that I don't have. I mean, I don't know everything, but with us all together, God, the understanding that we have as a group is just amazing. And we're also, doing some fabulous things and new things and developing things. And you don't have to stay the same way and change. You can stay the same and change with the times and be even more relevant. And that inspires me. And these people, it's just fantastic to see them grow. And the only example I can give is as a secretary of any kind of unit. But when you interview people, get them to come along and they join, and you see them come in and then they progress and develop and then become senior members, you feel like a parent. And so these people I'm inspired by are my Rosicrucian children, I suppose, in the nicest possible way. Yeah. But people who have this enthusiasm, and in 10, 15 years time, your successor will be interviewing them and they'll be saying, well, what's inspiring you? And that is what it's all about. You couldn't, as a person, ask for anything greater than something you believe in going forwards being better than it was. And that's inspiration to me.
Wow, that's a fantastic answer. Alistair, it has been a pleasure, a honor meeting with you and learning about who you are and how your creativity transformed into your work. An inspiration, actually, truly an inspiration. What I'm glad about is that this conversation ends now, but you already gave me the hint about 3 more conversations based on your future books. So I know that we are going to see each other again.
Oh, absolutely. You must, if you're coming to London, I'll find you, give me a ring and we'll meet up.
We will. Thank you so much for your time and openness in answering all my questions, Alistair. Thank you.
It was easy. It was an easy thing to do. Thank you.